Yo, what is up, guys? It is Reed. I am 27, just an average dude. I've made tons of money mistakes in my 20s, and now I want to share everything I've learned to help you take control of your finances and your life. Let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself. What was the first thing you thought about when you got your first real paycheck or your first bonus or your first chunk of money that felt significant, like real money, not just pocket change? Did you think about what car you could buy, what vacation you could take, what fancy thing you could finally afford? Because that is what most people do. And I know because that is exactly what I did, and it kept me broke for years. See, remember my first big freelance check? I was like 23 years old and I got paid $3,000 for a project, and I felt like a king. I felt like I had made it. And the very first thing I did was go out and buy a television that I did not need and a pair of sneakers that cost way too much, and I took my friends out for dinner and basically blew the whole check within a week, and then I was broke again. Back to square one, back to counting pennies, back to wondering when the next check would come in, and I did not even realize what I had done. I thought I was treating myself. I thought I deserved it because I worked hard, but what I actually did was eat. My seed, I took the thing that could have grown into something bigger, and I consumed it in an instant for a temporary dopamine heighten. That is the story of most people's financial lives. They get money and they immediately spend it, and they wonder why they never get ahead. They wonder why they feel stuck year after year after year, while the people around them seem to be moving forward. And the answer is brutally simple. The people who build wealth do not trap at money as a reward. They treat it as capital. They treat it as a tool. They treat it as a seed that if planted will grow into a forest, but if eaten will give you nothing but a moment of satisfaction followed by hunger again. There is this concept that completely changed the way I think about money, and it is the idea of the seed versus the reward. Most people treat their first real chunk of money as a reward for all their hard work. And I get it. I really do. You have been grinding, you have been sacrificing, you have been saying no to things, and finally you have some money in your hand and you feel like you deserve to treat yourself, and you do deserve to treat yourself. But here's the thing. If you treat yourself with all of it, you will be right back where you started with nothing to show for your hard work except some memories and some stuff that is already low seeing value. The people who actually build wealth, they treat their first real money as a seed. They understand that this money is not for consuming, it is for planting, and they let it grow, and they resist the urge to dig it up and spend it on something shiny, because they know that if they are patient, the seed will grow into something that produces fruit for the rest of their lives. And the difference between eating the seed and planting the seed is literally the difference between being broke forever and building real lasting wealthy. Want to tell you about two people I knew in college. They were both smart, both hardworking, both came from similar backgrounds. Let me call them Dave and Mike. Dave got his first real job out of school making like $55,000 a year, and within 6 months he had a brand new car, a new wardrobe, a fancy apartment, and a ton of credit card debt. He looked successful on the outside, but underneath he was living paycheck to paycheck, and any little emergency would have completely destroyed him. Mike, on the other hand, got a job making about the same amount, and he kept driving his old beat-up Honda. He kept living with roommates, he kept eating cheap food, and he saved every extra dollar he could. For 2 years, he built up a $20,000 emergency fund. Then he started investing in index funds, and he kept living below his means fast forward. 5 years, Dave was still driving a car he could not afford, still living paycheck to paycheck, still stressed about money. And when he got laid off during a recession, he had no savings, no safety net, and he had to move back in with his parents. Mike, by then, had over $100,000 invested. He had bought a small condo. He had a career he loved because he could afford to take risks, and he had the confidence that comes from knowing he could survive anything that life threw at him. Same starting point, completely different outcomes, and the only difference was what they did with their first real money. Dave spent his, Mike planted his. Think about that story all the time because it is such a perfect example of how the small decisions we make early in life compound into massive differences later. And the key moment, the turning point, is that first time you have a meaningful amount of money in your hands and you have to decide what to do with Ether is something that really hit me hard when I first started learning about personal finance. Most people think the path to wealth is about making more money. And yes, making more money helps, but honestly, the bigger factor is what you do with the money you already have. There are people making $300,000 a year who are broke because they spend every cent, and there are people making $50,000 a year who are building real wealth because they save and invest a significant portion of their income. And the difference is not in the difference is behavior. Warren Buffett, the guy who is literally one of the richest people in the world, still lives in the same house he bought in 1958. For $31,500, he is worth over $100 billion, and he still eats breakfast at McDonald's and drives a modest car. And people think he is weird for that, but what they do not realize is that his wealth is not an accident. It is the direct result of a lifetime of treating money as capital instead of consumption. He understood from a very young age that every dollar he saved was a dollar that could work for him, and he let those dollars compound for decades and decades and decades until they turned into something unimaginable. And the crazy thing is that the same principle applies to everyone, not just billionaires. Remember when I first started taking my finances seriously, I had about $10,000 saved up, which was the most money I had ever had in my life, and I was so tempted to spend it. I wanted to buy a new laptop, I wanted to take a trip, I wanted to upgrade my life in some visible way, and I literally had to sit myself down and have a conversation with myself. I had to say, Reed, if you spend this money, you will feel good for a week, and then you will be back at zero, and you will have to start all over again. But if you keep it and invest it and let it grow in 10 years, it could be 20,000. In 20 years, it could be 40,000 or more. And that money could be the difference between being trapped in a job you hate and having the freedom to do what you want. I chose to keep it and invest it. And honestly, that was the single most important financial decision I have ever made because it set a pattern. It taught me that I could the urge to consume, and it showed me that delayed gratification actually works. And once you experience that, once you see your money growing without you having to do anything, it becomes addictive in a good way. You start to want to save more. You start to want to invest more. You start to see money not as something to spend, but as something to grow. And here is the thing that most people do not understand about capital. Once you have a chunk of money working for you, it changes your entire psychology. You stop thinking like a worker and start thinking like an owner. You stop worrying about your hourly wage and start thinking about your return on investment. You stop asking, how can I make more money, and start asking, how can I make my money work harder for me? And that shift in mindset is worth more than any amount of money because it changes the way you see the world. You have a mentor named James who was in his late 50s and he retired at 45, and he told me something that I will never forget. He said, read the day I stopped looking at money as something to spend and started looking at it as something to deploy was the day my life changed forever. He said, most people treat money like a toy to be played with and consumed, but wealthy people treat money like a soldier to be deployed into battle to bring back more resources. And that metaphor stuck with me because it is so true. Every dollar you save is a soldier that can go out and fight for you. Every dollar you invest is a worker that can earn money while you sleep. And the more soldiers you deploy, the more territory you conquer, the more freedom you gain. And I think the reason so many people struggle with this is because we are surrounded by messages telling us to consume. Every ad, every billboard, every social media post is telling you that you deserve to treat yourself, that you should buy this thing, that life is short and you should enjoy it. Now, and there is some truth to that. Life is short and you should enjoy it. But the key is balance. You do not have to live like a monk. You do not have to save every single penny and never have any fun. But you do need to be intentional about what you spend and what you save. And you need to understand that the money you save and invest today is the freedom you buy. 4. Tomorrow we want to give you a practical framework that helped me because I know this stuff can feel abstract. So here it is. Every time you get a chunk of money, a paycheck, a bonus, a gift, a tax return, anything, I want you to split it 3 ways. First, pay yourself first, meaning save and invest at least 20% of it before you spend a single dollar on anything else. Second, cover your necessities, rent, food, buy, the stuff you actually need to survive. And third, and only third, use the remaining money for discretionary spending. Fun stuff, treats, things you want but do not need. And if you follow that order consistently, I promise you over time your savings will grow and your stress will shrink and you will start to feel a sense of control over your money that you never had before. And I want to be real with you. This is not easy, especially at first. When you are used to spending everything you make, it feels painful to save. It feels like you are depriving yourself and your brain will come up with a million excuses why you should spend the money instead. But if you can push through that initial discomfort, if you can build the habit of saving and investing first, it will become automatic, and after a while it will feel more painful to spend money than to save it because you will have seen what savings can become. The most powerful financial principle in the world is compound interest, and the most important ingredient in compound interest is time. The earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow, and the more time your money has to grow, the more powerful the effect becomes. And the difference between starting at 25 versus starting at 35 is not 10 years of savings, it is potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost growth over a lifetime. So if you are young and you have the chance to start now, please do not waste it. Please do not look back in 20 years and wonder what could have been if you had just saved and invested that first real chunk of money instead of spending it on stuff that does not matter. Mari will leave you with this. The moment you get your first real money, the first time you have a meaningful amount of cash in your hand, you will be faced with a choice. You can consume it and feel good for a moment, or you can plant it and build a future. The people who choose to plant it are the ones who end up free. The ones who choose to consume it stay stuck on the treadmill forever. Do not eat your seed, plant it, water it, give it time. And one day you will look around and realize you are living in a forest that you grew with your own hands.